Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and we are back with more notable names in Arab American history. Today, we are looking at Helen Thomas. This is a article from the Hollywood Reporter 2013. She was the longtime White House reporter, and she had recently passed at 92 in 2013. So, yeah, talking about that. So she lived a long life. Um, but yeah, had a history to sit in the press corps, being a White House correspondent, to question 9 presidents. So, it's what? Obama, W. Bush, Clinton, H.W. Bush, Reagan, Carter, Ford, Nixon. I mean, she would have started with LBJ, Lyndon Johnson, so not too bad. Anyway, yeah, just to kind of give you an introduction to what she did. Press Corps. She was born August the 4th, 1920, in Winchester, Kentucky, and died July the 20th, 2013, in Washington, D.C., and was an American journalist known for her coverage of the U.S. presidents, breaking through a number of barriers for women reporters, and won great respect in her field. She was born to Lebanese immigrants, the 7th of 9 children, and when she was 4 years old, the family moved to Detroit. While attending high school, she decided on becoming a journalist, finding the perfect work and the perfect outlet for her curiosity. She went to Wayne State University in Detroit, working on the campus newspaper and receiving a Bachelor of Arts in 1942. Then moving to Washington, D.C. The following year, she was hired by the United Press, later called United Press International, to write local news for radio. She was given a regular beat at the U.S. Department of Justice in 1955. A job that would come to include coverage of Capitol Hill, the FBI, and the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. Her first assignment was related to the presidency, covering a vacation of newly elected John F. Kennedy and his family, whetting her taste for presidential coverage. So she's not yet press secretary, but she's already covering stories in D.C., Capitol Hill. So yeah, Capitol Hill, deals a lot with your Congress, legislative, the FBI, and one of the executive branch departments, Department of Health, Education, and Welfare. Let's see. From then on, she attended presidential press conferences and briefings, and gained a reputation for asking blunt questions with an irreverent and populist flavor. In 1970, she was promoted to the position of White House correspondent, and 2 years later became the only print journalist to accompany President Nixon on his historic trip to China. Not long after the Watergate scandal gripped the country, she distinguished herself through a number of exclusive stories. In 1974, she was the United Press International's White House bureau chief, the first woman to hold such a position for a wire service. This was one of a number of firsts for Thomas as a female reporter, starting in 1959 when she and some female colleagues forced the then all-male National Press Club to allow them to attend an address to the group by Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev during the Cold War. Press Club opened its membership to women in 1971. Thomas became its first official officer. Female officer, I should say. In 1975, the Gridiron Club, DC's most exclusive press organization, invited her to become the first female member, and she became its president in 1993. As the senior wire service correspondent at the White House, she was known to television viewers as the reporter who signified, "Thank you, Mr. President," signaling the end of White House press conferences. She would write 2 books, Dateline White House and Front Row at the White House, My Life and Times. She would resign from the United Press International in 2000 after the news agency was acquired by News World Communications, a company founded by the Reverend Sun Myung Moon. That's dealing with a South Korean cult, if I remember correctly. So yeah. That same year, she joined Hearst News Service as a columnist. 2010, she announced her immediate retirement following the controversial remarks she made regarding the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Following year, she began writing a column for the Falls Church News Press, a weekly paper in Virginia. Among her other writings, "Thanks for the Memories, Mr. President," "Wit and Wisdom from the Front Row at the White House," "Watchdogs of Democracy, the Waning Washington Press Corps and How It Failed the Public," "Listen Up, Mr. President, Everything You Always wanted your president to know and do," and a book for children, "The Great White House Breakout." But yeah, that's all from Britannica. Now, let's look a little more in depth with Wikipedia. She was born Helen Amelia Thomas, August 4th, 1920, in Winchester, Kentucky. Dying July 20th, 2013, in Washington, D.C. Graduated from Wayne State University. Pioneering female reporter. Married to one man, Douglas B. Cornell. She was the seventh of 9 children to George and Mary Roaday Thomas, immigrants from Tripoli, Lebanon, then part of the Ottoman Empire. Because, yeah, remember, she born in 1920, so it's the late ends of the Ottoman Empire. Thomas said her father's surname, Antonius, was anglicized to Thomas when he entered the U.S. at Ellis Island, and that her parents could neither read nor write. She was raised primarily in Detroit, although she was born in Kentucky. Her family moved when she was 4 years old, and her father ran a grocery store. Growing up, she says, we were never hyphenated as Arab Americans. We were American. And I have always rejected the hyphen, and I believe all assimilated immigrants should not be designated ethnically. It's a fair point. Or separated, of course, by race or creed either. These are trends that ever try to divide us as a people. Yeah, it's something I've talked about for a long time. Categorize. They like to categorize people in the U.S. It's been this way for a long time. You think of the American census every 10 years. Are you white, Arab American, African American, Jewish, Hispanic, Latin American, Native American? Are you rich? Are you poor? Are you of this certain age bracket? Are you of this certain religious ideation? Yeah. There's a love of categorizing things in America. There always has been, for some stupid reason. I don't know why. But yeah. She also said that in Detroit in the 1920s, she came home crying from school. They wanted to make you feel you weren't American. We were called garlic eaters. She was a member of the Antiochian Orthodox Church. So yeah, there was a number of Lebanese that were leaving Lebanon at this point. Apparently, there was some kind of civil war. But also, like I said, the Ottoman Empire was crumbling. It was involved in World War I, which ends in 1918. And that kind of was the death knell for the Ottoman Empire. And it would be forever divided up into the nations we know it, for the most part, as now. Your Syrias, Lebanon, Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Yemen, UAE, all these different countries. Before, it was just all territory under the Ottoman Empire, and the Ottoman Empire gave them quite a bit of leeway, but you still belonged as part of the Ottoman Empire. It wasn't really the kind of borders that we know it as now. Yeah. George and Mary Rowdy Thomas, or Mary Rowdy Antonius. And of course, as is the tendency of so many American and English speakers, anglicize, make it more English-like. 'Cause I need them to speak English and be a language I can understand. Yeah. She would get her first job as a copy girl in journalism with the now defunct Washington Daily News, no longer existing Washington Daily News. It ceased being in 1972, so 21 to 72. After 8 months on the paper, she joined with her colleagues in a strike action and was fired. She then joined the United Press, which would later become UPI, United Press International, in 1943, and reported on women's topics for its Radio Wire service. First assignments mainly were on just societal issues, women's news, and celebrity profiles. Usually what they consider, they're just women. They don't need to know about real stuff. So you see what it's saying. Societal issues, women's news, celebrity profiles. You know, like a lot of stuff directed toward women's like, see what they're wearing today. Such condescension, man. Later in the decade and in the early 50s, she wrote for United Press's Names in the News column, for which she interviewed numerous Washington celebrities. In 55, she was assigned to cover the U.S. Department of Justice, and later assigned to cover other agencies, including the United States Department of Health and Capitol Hill, where the Capitol building sits. So 55, graduating from college in 42, so it took her a few years of working in some of the less enjoyable positions. She had to kind of earn her stripes, so to speak. She, of course, would break ground, becoming part of the she would serve as the Women's National Press Club president. She and a few of her fellow female journalists forced the National Press Club, then barred to women journalists, to allow them to attend the address by Nikita Khrushchev, USSR leader at that time during the Cold War. I believe Khrushchev took over after the death of Stalin. Anyway. But yeah, presidential correspondent. November 1960, she began covering then President-elect John F. Kennedy. President-elect just means the people have chosen you, but your term has not yet started. That's all it means. He's soon to be president. Taking an initiative to switch from reporting the women's angle to reporting the news of the day. She became a White House correspondent for UPI in January '61 and became known as the Sitting Buddha and the First Lady of the Press. It was during Kennedy's administration that she began ending presidential press conferences with her signature, "Thank you, Mr. President," reviving a tradition started by the United Press International's Albert Merriman Smith during FDR's presidency. So apparently her first president was not LBJ, it was JFK. Then she went LBJ through them all. Apparently she was not in the White House press corps during Obama. So yeah. But everybody from JFK up to, she had conversations and question and everything, so yeah. When Cuban leader Fidel Castro was asked in the early 2000s what the difference between democracy in Cuba and democracy in the United States, Castro reportedly replied, "I don't have to answer questions from Helen Thomas." She considered Castro's reply the height of flattery. You know, this was back when journalists had some gumption. Were not afraid of asking questions that would keep them from getting future questions and interviews, as they do now. They actually did what they were supposed to do. But of course, also during this period, Fox News was on the rise because the FCC had ended the Truman Doctrine. Yeah. Screwing up the way news is presented ever since. But Helen Thomas was part of the old school. In 1962, she convinced Kennedy not to attend the annual dinners held for White House correspondents and photographers if they disallowed women from attending. Kennedy moved for the dinners to be combined into one event with women allowed to attend. So yeah, she truly was moving mountains for a female journalist. She was the only female print journalist to accompany Richard Nixon in his 1972 visit to China, which was the first time a U.S. president had visited China, I think, since Mao had took power in the late 40s. So yeah. During the Watergate scandal, Martha Mitchell, wife of U.S. Attorney General John N. Mitchell, frequently called Thomas to discuss how the Nixon administration was using Mitchell as a scapegoat. So she was getting a lot of inside information. Thomas circled the globe several times, traveling with every U.S. president from Nixon through Obama. She covered every economic summit since 1975, working up to the position of UPI's White House Bureau Chief, a post she would hold for over 25 years. During this time, she authored a regular column, Backstairs at the White House, which provided an insider's view of various presidential administrations. In 1975, the Washington Press Corps Club, then known as the Gridiron Club, admitted Thomas, making her the first woman to become a member. And from 1975 through 1976, she would serve as the first female president of the White House Correspondents Association. The only member of the White House Press Corps to have her own seat in the White House briefing room. All other seats were assigned to media outlets. Hers was like, the seats were set CBS, ABC, NBC, CNN, Time. Hers, though, was Helen Thomas. That's how big a part she was at that time. On May the 17th, 2000, the day after it was announced UPI had been acquired by News World Communications, an international media conglomerate founded and controlled by the Unification Church leader, Reverend Sun Myung Moon, which owns the Washington Times and other news media. Thomas resigned from UPI after 57 years with the company. She later described the change in ownership as a bridge too far. Less than 2 months later, she had joined Hearst newspapers, which is named after Randolph Hearst, one of the big names of owners who owned papers. I think it was William Randolph Hearst was his name, but yeah. And she would be an opinion columnist writing on national affairs and the White House. After leaving UPI, she became more likely to air her personal negative views. At a speech at MIT, she quipped, "I censored myself for 50 years when I was a reporter. Now I wake up and ask myself, who do I hate today?" Yeah. During W's first term, Helen Thomas reacted to Press Secretary Ari Fleischer's statements about arms shipments to the terrorists by asking, "Where do the Israelis get their arms?" He responded, "What's the difference, Helen?" And that is, "What is the difference?" she asked. He responded, "The targeting of innocents through the use of terror, which is a common enemy for Yasser Arafat and the people of Israel," as well as she interrupted him saying, "Palestinian people are fighting for their land." So even more reason to like Helen Thomas. Even though she would be attacked for this and it would hurt her career. She was on the right track. She was on the correct side of history. She responded, "I think that the killing of innocents is a category entirely different. He responded, "I think the killing of innocents is a category entirely different. Justifying killing of innocents for land is an argument in support of terrorism." Which, of course, these are the days following 9/11. So everybody was, which is why she had such difficulty getting the backing she would have had now. January 2003, following a speech at the Society of Professional Journalists banquet, Thomas told an autograph seeker, "I'm covering the worst president in American history," talking about George W. Bush. The autograph seeker was a sports writer for the Daily Breeze, and her comments were published. After that, she was not called upon during a press conference for the first time in over 4 decades. She wrote to the president to apologize. That sucks. For many years, Thomas sat in the front row and asked the first question during White House press conferences. But, according to Thomas, in a 2006 Daily Show interview, this ended because she no longer represented a wire service. During the Bush administration, Thomas was moved to the back row during press conferences. She was called upon at briefings on a daily basis, but no longer ended presidential news conferences by saying, "Thank you, Mr. President." When asked why she was seated in the back row, she said, "They didn't like me. I asked too many mean questions." You know, the way Trump is now as a little bitch. On March the 21st, 2006, Thomas was called upon directly by George W. Bush for the first time in 3 years and asked him about the war in Iraq. "I'd like to ask you, Mr. President, your decision to invade Iraq. Every reason given, publicly at least, has turned out not to be true. My question is, why did you really want to go to war? You haven't said it wasn't oil, quest for oil. It hasn't been Israel or anything else. What was it?" Bush responded by discussing the war on terror, of course, that old nugget, stating as a reason for the invasion that Saddam Hussein chose to deny. It was bullshit. He still wouldn't give an answer. We know Hussein being the reason was bullshit. In 2006, she told The Hill, "The day Dick Cheney is going to run for president, I'll kill myself. All we need is another liar. I think he'd like to run, but it would be a sad day for the country if he does." At the July 18, 2006 White House press briefing, Helen Thomas remarked, "The U.S. could have stopped the bombardment of Lebanon. We have that much control with the Israelis. We have gone for collective punishment against all of Israel, all of Lebanon and Palestine." Press Secretary Tony Snow responded, "Thank you for the Hezbollah view." Again, war on terror. This wasn't that long after 9/11, so everybody touch that button. Yeah, that's what it was like back in that day. Every time you did anything talking about common decency, but it was about Arab people, "You like terrorists, don't you?" Really? In a press conference on November the 30th, 2007, she questioned Dana Perino as to why Americans should depend on General David Petraeus in determining when to redeploy U.S. troops from Iraq. Perino began to answer when Thomas interjected with, "You mean how many more people we kill?" Perino took immediate offense, saying, "Helen, I find it really unfortunate that you use your front row position bestowed upon you by your colleagues to make such statements. It is an honor and a privilege to be in the briefing room, and we suggest that we, the U.S., are killing innocent people is just absurd and very offensive. But Thomas would refuse to back down, immediately saying that by asking Perino if she knew how many innocent Iraqis had been killed, and then questioned the worth of regret when Perino responded that the administration regretted the loss of all innocent Iraqi lives. Yeah. The Obama administration would be the last president she covered. Comments on Israel. Rabbi David Nesanoff of RabbiLive.com on the White House grounds with his son and a teenage friend for the May 27, 2010 American Jewish Heritage Celebration Day interviewed Thomas for an unscheduled short conversation as she was leaving the White House via the North Lawn driveway. When solicited for any comments on Israel, she said, "Tell them to get the hell out of Palestine, and remember these people are occupied and it's their land. Not German, it's not Poland." He would then ask, where should they go? What do they do? And she said, they go home. He would then reply with, where's the home? She said, back. She replied back, Poland. But in the middle of her answer, he adds to his question, so the Jews, she adds, Germany. And he finishes off, should go back to Poland and Germany. To which she finally responds, and America and everywhere else. Why push people out of there who have lived there for centuries? See? And about 2-minute long full cut of the May 2010 interview was posted on Nesanoff's YouTube channel on June 7th. The later interview on the Joey Behar show, Helen Thomas defended her comments. In response to Behar's question of whether she was an anti-Semite, she said, hell no! I'm a Semite of Arab background. She then said of Israelis, they're not Semites. Yeah. Semite is actually based on language, if I remember right, of the region. Yeah, is a term for an ethnic, cultural, or racial group associated with the people of the Middle East, including Arabs, Jews, Akkadians, and Phoenicians. Now remember, a lot of your modern Israelites are not of Jewish descent straight from the Middle East. They've been Ashkenazi Jews and others that have been throughout the world. The terminology is largely unused outside grouping Semitic languages in linguistics. So yeah, she is a Semite. How can she be an anti-Semite? She can be an anti-Israel person, but she makes a good point. They're not Semites. Anyway, she said in the CNN interview, why do they, the Jews, have to go anywhere? They aren't being persecuted. They don't have the right to take other people's land. When asked if she regretted the comment, she said, We have organized lobbyists in favor of Israel. AIPAC. You can't open your mouth. I can call the President of the United States anything in the book, but you say one thing about Israel, and you're off limits. AIPAC. Ah, fuck coughing and hiding. Fuck AIPAC. Following the controversy, the Executive Committee of the Society of Professional Journalists voted to recommend that the organization retire the Helen Thomas Award for Lifetime Achievement, which had been awarded since 2000. After her initial comments, the committee decided not to act, as it was a one-time spontaneous remark for which she apologized, but acted after she reiterated it. Thomas posted on June 4th the following response to her website. I deeply regret my comments I made last week. You know, the way pro-Israel shitbags attack people speaking facts. These Zionist fucktards. I know I'm using certain profanities and stuff, but I don't give a damn right now. Fuck AIPAC. Fuck the Zionist bullshit. Serious. I don't have anything against Jewish people. It's the Zionist Israel movement. Because they're willing to commit genocide. December 2nd, 2010, shortly before a speech for the 8th Annual Images and Perceptions of Arab Americans Conference in Dearborn, Michigan, she told reporters that she still stood by the comment she had made to Netanyahu. Referring to her resignation, she said, I paid a price, but it's worth it to speak the truth. During the speech, she said, Congress, the White House, Hollywood, and Wall Street are owned by Zionists. No question, in my opinion. On December the 7th, 5 days later, she would tell Scott Spears on radio station WMRN, I just think that people should be enlightened as to who is in charge of the opinion in this country. The next day, the Anti-Defamation League, fucking bullshit name, called for journalism schools and organizations to rescind any orders given to Thomas. The organization said that Thomas had clearly, unequivocally revealed herself as a vulgar anti-Semite. See, this is what I'm talking about. Groups like the ADF, AIPAC, they're bullshit ass hat motherfuckers who should be banned from any real fucking power. Asked by the Detroit Free Press how she would respond to people who say she is anti-Semitic, she responded, I'd say I'm a Semite. What are you talking about? As she said before, hey, you look at the actual definition of Semite, I am one. My family's from the frickin' region. Thomas was interviewed in April 2011 issue of Playboy magazine and made further contentious statements. Who do you actually think, or when asked, do you actually think there's a secret Jewish conspiracy at work in this country, the U.S., Thomas replied, "Not a secret. It's very open." I won't say it's Jewish. It's just part of the fact that certain groups have money, and that group uses that money for Jewish things. She would be a columnist for the Virginia Falls Church News Press, January 2011 to January 2012. Full year. The owner-editor repeatedly defended the decision to hire her despite her comments. He said in 2011 that he was outraged when the Society of Professional Journalists voted on retiring a scholarship award named for her. He also defended Thomas from anti-Semitism by saying that Thomas is herself a Semite and was expressing a political point of view in the interview with Nesanoff and not a bigoted racial sentiment. Yep. She would describe herself as a liberal. She chose her work over her personal life at 51. She married colleague Douglas Cornell, who was just retiring as the White House reporter for the Associated Press. 4 years later, he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and she cared for him until his death in 1982. She, as we've already talked about, she would die in 2013 in D.C. at the age of 92. She would be cremated and her ashes buried in Detroit following the traditional Antiochian Orthodox funeral service. Many female journalists memorialized Thomas on Twitter, saying, including Judy Woodruff, who called her a trailblazer, and Lynn Sweet, who said she was a glass-ceiling breaking journalist. Andrea Mitchell tweeted that Thomas made it possible for all of us who followed. Dana Perino, who served as press secretary under George W. Bush, remembered that on her first day as press secretary, Thomas approached her to give her words of encouragement. President Obama released a statement calling her a true pioneer who never failed to keep presidents, himself included, on their toes. In 2006, she encouraged Arab Americans to become journalists. For her own part, she says that while she's glad to see Americans of Arab descent winning journalism prizes, she would prefer simply to see more bylines with Arab names. So she has one instruction for newcomers: get into the game. She would receive multiple awards and more than 30 honorary degrees. She would, 1976, named the World Almanac's one of World Almanac's 25 most influential women in America. 1985, received the Columbia University Journalism Award. 1984, honored with the National Press Club Fourth Estate Award. 2000, she was presented with the Kiplinger Distinguished Contributions to Journalism Award. 86, received the William Allen White Foundation Award for Journalistic Merit. 1993, won the Walter Cronkite Award for Journalism Excellence in Journalism. Received the Al Newharth Award for Excellence in the Media from the Freedom Forum in 1991. The White House Correspondents Association in 1988 honored her by establishing the Helen Thomas Lifetime Achievement Award, even though they threatened to defunct it. In 2000, her alma mater, Wayne State University, established an award for journalists in her honor. the Helen Thomas Spirit of Diversity Award. Awesome. In December 2010, the award was discontinued by Wayne State, which cited her renewed remarks, similar to those in May 2010. Speaking for Wayne State, Matthew Seeger, its interim dean, said the award was given to promote the importance of diversity in the media and that this award is no longer helping us to achieve our goals. 2007, she received a For-Mother Award from the National Center of Health Research. 2010, Council on American Islamic Relations honored her with a Lifetime Achievement Award. 2012, received an award from the Palestine Liberation Organization General Mission to the United States and was presented by the PLO's Executive Committee member Hanan Ashrawi to recognize her long career in the field of journalism, during which she defended Palestinian position every step of the way. The Society of Professional Journalists had an annual award for the top journalist named after Thomas, but decided to retire the award in 2011 because they're chicken shits. The executive board initially said it would keep the award after Thomas's comments calling for Jews to leave Israel to the Palestinians and return to Europe, Russia, and America, but the board decided to retire the award after Thomas's remarks later in 2010 about the alleged control of the United States by Zionists. Several pro-Thomas individuals in leadership roles campaigned to have the award reinstated, but the retirement decision was upheld by the group's regional leadership that year in an 85-77 margin at its national convention, marking the permanent end of any ties between Helen Thomas and the Society of Professional Journalists. But, woo, that was a long one. Helen Thomas, born to Lebanese parents in Kentucky. They had immigrated from Tripoli, and the port of Tripoli. Yeah. It is part of the Marine anthem. That part's always in my head. Dun 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 dun, dun Tripoli. Anyway, yeah, Helen Thomas. She really opened doors and moved mountains for other female journalists. But yeah, since this has been so long, we'll go ahead and end this here. As always, educate thyself, think, read, study, learn. Someone tells you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. I'll be putting my links and sources in the description box below the video. Thank you all for watching. See you all in the next video. Until then, later.